Hey there, guys, and welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about the 12 absolute vendors that any South Asian wedding needs in order to ensure that their wedding is an absolute success. With lots of moving parts, it's important that you make sure that not only you vet each one of these vendors, but that you hit the checkbox on them as well. Your first vendor, if I could not exaggerate this even more, as you've heard it most likely previously, if not very soon, a wedding planner. Absolute must, even if it's just day of. You really need someone to take that worry, manage that stress, and make sure that everything is going on without a hitch. It's very important that not only they handle, but they help you create and they execute. Venues. Number two, they set the foundation, the tone for your event. And it's very important that you realize this is where everybody is going to feel the backdrop of your event lies. They're going to accommodate as well as provide and host this event. This is the scene setting display that you need. So you want to make sure that not only are they going to accommodate your guests, but that they don't have vendor restrictions keeping you from using whoever you want to use as your wedding vendors. Number three, let's talk about your caterer, because South Asian weddings, depending on the region, have a certain specific cuisine that they want. Whether you're from Punjab or you're from Kerala, it's very important that you book that vendor, especially catering, because they fill up quick. This is kind of artistic vision that is a part of your big day. And there are not many great caterers out there. So you need to make sure that the ones that are in demand book up fast and you don't want to lose them. So make sure that you find the vendor that provides the greatest food, because in a South Asian event, it's going to be the one thing most people do remember. And while I'm a little bit biased and probably available right now, if you book early enough, photography, it's one of those things that we are going to be the creators behind the vision of your love story. I'm a big one on prompt, not posed. And I want to make sure that I keep those images as consistent as possible with your overall day. If your day is outside and it's light and free flowing, your images should say that. When we have weddings that occur inside, it's very important, especially if it's during the seasons in which you don't have a whole lot of light. It's important that a photographer knows exactly how to work light and bring light to the situation. They're going to help you create, understand while they're covering all of these events. So it's very important that photography is one of the things that you really look into and make sure that it's something that you're going to be in love with over and over and over again, because you don't get to do the same thing twice. And next, the fifth vendor, the videographer. These guys are definitely not given the credit that they deserve. While they do record and create and be able to focus on all those little things that photography misses, like the way your grandparents will laugh, the way your mother smiles, or the way your father looks over to you as his daughter. And not only that, but if you decide to do father-daughter and mother-son dances, photography can definitely freeze that moment in time, but being able to get the laughter and the moment where mom drops her head into dad's shoulder and drops a couple tears, being able to see that animated is something, nothing less of a miracle. And with the way that equipment and technology are today, and the fact that videographers can approach this in the most unobtrusive way possible, being able to book a team that can give that cinematic style to your day is just as important as the photographer you hire as well. The decorator. I cannot stress this enough. Many times as, non-decorators, non-planners, we don't have a whole lot of interaction with the decorators, but sometimes that can be a drawback. I really like to have my foot in the door when it comes to dealing with the decorators. It's important that we know how far the mandap is from the first seated guest, how wide the aisle is going to be, so that when the bride comes in, whether she's going to be coming in with people walking with her by herself or just accompanied by her parents down the aisle, it's very important that we know all those things so that when we place ourselves, we're in the most unobtrusive way possible, because you got to get past us, you've got to get up into the mandap, and we need to make sure that we're not missing any step of the beat as we go. Decorators are going to be the single most people that help you set that design into motion. Whatever it is you visualize, whatever mood board you've created, it is their chance to really show what they're capable of by bringing to life exactly what you've thought in your mind onto a piece of paper so that you can aesthetically see it all come together so that before you get there the big day, there's no surprises in a negative way rather than a positive way. And you guys have felt that they've exceeded and well met those expectations. Not only are they going to incorporate the designs that have gone out on your invitations to designs that have gone through your other events, it all should look like it flows together. It's kind of like building a house. When you walk into somebody's home, it should be a reflection of the outside going in. And as you go from room to room, while each one may have a theme, they should feel like they belong together. Mixing styles and ages, you tend to walk in and you're like, this is an eclectic mix. And while that can be pulled off too, you're going to need a special team to do that. So as you move forward with your decorator, make sure that they're working hand in hand with your lighting team. That's going to be a key in making sure that all the shadows are filled, because photography can only do so much, video can only do so much, and your guests can only see so much from those seats. Hair and makeup. Let me tell you, this is probably one of my biggest pet peeves. I am single-handedly photographing whoever is doing your hair and makeup. And one thing, even though I know we are COVID past, for a makeup artist to have a mask on is super distracting in images. I would like to say, have moved past that process. And if they think that they're sick, they should in no way, shape, or form be at your event in the first place. So I encourage you to ask your makeup artist, what are they going to be wearing when they show up to your event? Same with hair. They both go hand in hand. What will they be wearing when they come to your event? Are they going to be presentable? A lot of our brides tend to get ready early in the morning, and we show up and those makeup artists can look quite a hot mess. So I want to make sure that you ask them these questions. If they have a position where they're working early in the morning, they need to go to bed earlier so that they can get up, make themselves not only presentable to everyone around them, but to be in your pictures. Not only do we see their hands, so it's very important that their hands be manicured. Not only do we see their faces, but their hairs can't just be sloppy messes and their face look like all of your guests and all of your your bridesmaids and your parents are wondering, like, why did they hire them? They need to represent what they bring in, especially if they're going to be in your pictures, because that is one of those things when we get asked to present into publications or we send over images for publication, if the makeup artist is not like prepared to be in those pictures, it usually cuts it from our list. We usually will not present any getting ready pictures to any publication in order to really show that venue, show that, whole event as a whole, because we like to storytell. So we like to be there from the beginning to the end. And I can't exaggerate this enough about asking your hair and makeup people how they're going to present on the day of. Then that's for a discussion for you to say, okay, well, what's your approach to makeup? Some people airbrush, some people have a more dewy look to them. I know that each hair and makeup person is going to accommodate your needs. But I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. You really need to find a makeup artist that consistently meets the aesthetic. I'm not saying jumps from one to another. They're very talented people that can make and break your wedding day. And if you really look at their work, you'll definitely see consistencies in there. So I would look through their Instagram, look through other people's pictures that have posted of their work and not just their work. And of course, first question first, before you even get into it, because that's going to show you their nature and how they handle things. You need to ask them how they're going to present. Do they usually get ready and stuff before they come, or because they're starting early, do they just throw it together and show up? That is important. And I think that if any makeup artist questions why you're asking that, you should question, do they really have a spot at your wedding vendor table? So what's up next, guys? Let's talk a little bit about DJ and live entertainment. So when we were doing Jewish weddings before we even hit the Indian market, there is so much value in having live entertainment. I understand that this might not work so much for our wedding receptions, but any pre-function party that you're having, whether it's a Mehndi, Sangeet, or Garba, to have that live entertainment just steps it up a notch. Whether it is actual singers, just musicians, whatever it is, we absolutely love it. It brings so much life. And for the people who are non-Indians at the event, it allows them to have a party starter. So live entertainment and DJ, find someone who can command the room. Find someone who knows what they're doing with their audio setup. Find someone who is not a club DJ, because club music is totally different than event setup, convention setup. Those things, audio is so important, clarity is so important, and making sure that they know how that noise is going to bounce off the walls is so important, because if it's awful, people start leaving the reception and they start standing outside. And when they're outside, they're often wondering, why am I still here? So it's important, in order to keep everybody happy and wanting to be there, that they know what they're doing with their lighting. They have it high and not shooting anybody's eye. And sound, they know what to do, because sound bounces all around. Number 9, let's talk about florists at Indian weddings, South Asian weddings, any wedding, South Asian necessarily. Florists play a big part. And the common thing right now is, do I do silk or do I do real? And the big thing that I'm seeing happening in the last 2 years is a mix of both. It helps cut back on costs, but not only that, it allows them to go ahead and pre-set up a lot of that stuff, so that as you're flipping events and as you're starting events, things can happen much more faster, because they can bring this stuff in already set up and just add the elements of real in there. And most people, unless you go up and you feel it, you're like, was that real or is that fake? It's stunning. It's gorgeous. It's lush. And it's, I think, probably given that you're cutting into a fraction of the cost by just cutting back on all the florals that can be swapped out with. There's even seasonal stuff. Hydrangeas are something that our girls love, but they just turn so fast. And so being able to mix the silk with the real, if you have a really talented florist, she or he is going to know exactly how to make it flow. But floristry, importantly, a lot of decorators offer this. And one of the things that I will stress is, if you can hire a separate florist from your actual decorator for the mandap and all that stuff, I would encourage it, or at least encourage hiring 2 separate vendors where they can work together. It's not often that I see a lot of decorators that can mix it all. And once you start hitting those decorators that can bring it all, the cost begins to go up astronomically. So you really want to take into consideration, is my decorator going to do my florals, or can I find a florist who can do the florals hand in hand with my decorator? It's a good question to ask, and one certainly to look into. Number 10 on my list is priests and pundits. What is it that you need? If you're having a multicultural wedding, some priests won't even go outside of the church to do ceremonies. So you need to ask that question. Same thing goes for Sikh weddings. There are a lot of gurdwaras that are against having weddings outside of the gurdwara. So you need to make sure that if you have too many guests to be able to fit in the gurdwara, some of them will make an exception. But you need to find out, do you need a priest, or do you need a pundit, or do you need both? Because it's very, very important that you lock them in early, especially if you want one fluent in all languages that are going to be present during your wedding, such as English and Spanish, or English and Hindi, or Telugu and English, whatever it's going to be. It's really important that you lock those in. Not only that, but you have to have a conversation with them before you can even decide the timings for vendors or the timings for your event. So make sure that you get that early on your list. It'll be one of those things you thank me later for. Number 11, guys, is the Mehndi Artist. This person usually, I have found that some of the best Mehndi artists also are able to do hair, makeup, dressage, and Mehndi. But I've also found some that are on Instagram that do just Mehndi and are like, wow. But we have been super lucky to also come across people that can do both. If you're looking for somebody to be really intricate in your designs and come up with a custom design that blends in all the things about, like, when you guys dated, different cities, different things. If you guys had a macaroon that was like your favorite thing when you dated, like, there are some Mehndi artists that will just sit and go through this process with you of all the things you loved, and be able to really hone in on what this Mehndi design looks like, present it to you, and then actually bring it to life. So if Mehndi is one of those things, we all know you guys are going to be sitting hours upon end on getting done. Make sure you do the research. Start looking around. Instagram is so valuable now for seeing how detailed, how thin and intricate those lines are, and how these Mehndi artists are able to make this happen. Not only so detail oriented, but some of them are so fast now that we went from like 5-6 hours of sitting now to these happening in 3 hours with the right team. Next up is transportation. I cannot stress this enough, because we have seen some hot messes in transportation. You want to make sure, whether it's a car or it's a horse, whatever it is, whether it's a carriage, whatever it is. I would also ask, who is going to be coming. Like if you have a specific driver who's driving and they're a family member, then that's already figured out. But if you have someone who's going to be chauffeuring, we've seen people come and they've had these old vintage cars, and then the guy driving them is like dad from up the road in a t-shirt and a pair of pants. And that's you're paying a rental for a car. And I understand that it's dad's car up the road, but he does need to dress the part. It doesn't need to be super fancy, but definitely business casual. The person who's doing your horse, if they are normally dressed up, we've seen some really disastrous situations where they just look a mess. They're not presentable. And we've got this groom up on this horse looking all majestic, and the person walking them is just not presentable. So make sure you ask the questions. Look at pictures of them doing events that have been done in the past and see how they look and ask, is that going to be the same person who's going to show up to be there for my event when it takes place? Because often enough, there's a lot of vendors who they book the services, they meet with you, walk you through the process, and then they're not the ones who show up. So make sure you ask who actually is going to be at your event, no matter which service you're hiring. My last vendor that I'm going to mention is lighting. Many people think DJ and lighting come hand in hand, but I can promise you, lighting is super important. I always joke with my girls that when they're up there on the mandap, if lighting is not done right, no matter how amazing of a photographer we are, if you have light coming from the bottom and not dropping from the top, when we were kids and we used to hide in the closet or try to scare our parents and we'd grab a flashlight and we'd be like, boo. That's the effect you're going to get if your lighting is not on point. And yes, we are photographers and we can throw light places. And when you have things blocking, you just can't stick up lights everywhere. You do not want to cause all this added attention or take away from the beauty of your mandap by having all this crazy lighting and equipment everywhere. Photography and videography should both be minimal in how much equipment is strewn everywhere. We are now in a position where technology has come such a long way that our cameras, even in some of the lowest lighting situations, can still present great results. Now, there are times lighting is a must and we cannot get away from it, but I know from our side that if we can avoid all that extra lighting and distracting stuff so that we can capture the natural stuff, we're going to go for that first, bar none. So, what can I tell you about the lighting? DJs usually do offer lighting. And if they offer lighting from above that can provide stage washes, and I'm not, this is a big, big touchdown subject, and I could spend a whole podcast on this. But when you talk to your DJ, ask them what type of lighting they're going to be offering. If they tell you that they're going to offer up lights, this is not a lighting team, and this is not the proper lighting for your team. Your decorator certainly can provide a chandelier or some type of pin lights on the inside of your mandap, and I would recommend the decorator do the lights from the inside of the mandap. That is their structure, it's their liability, and they should be responsible for throwing 360 lighting all around the top of that. But if there's any extra stuff, I would definitely encourage your lighting team to give that stage wash on top of any lighting done. It creates that separation. And really, if you're having an indoor South Asian wedding, lighting is not one of those things that you can forego. It's almost up there with right after you book that planner, secure your lighting team, because lighting teams make the difference for all of us and they allow the guests to actually see what's taking place. If you've ever gone to a South Asian wedding and you've seen that mandap, sometimes it's dark and you've got people 15 rows back who can't even see what's going on up there. So I highly encourage, if you're not doing screens, definitely make it a consideration. If you have above 200 people, screens are an absolute must so that you don't get complaints about the aisle being blocked or people walking or not being able to see. It really gives you the beauty of being able to see that even on those screens, and allow those live streamers out there now since COVID to work hand in hand with your shoot team to make sure your event is absolutely seamless. I have a few bonus vendors as well that I wanted to share with you guys because these are not must-haves, but you definitely need them. And I feel with technology advancing, some of them have been a little bit of a lost art, but always add that extra touch. I'm one of those girls absolutely in love with letterpress cards and all things letterhead, pencils, papers, fountain pens. I'm crazy about that stuff. But your invitations, there's so many crazy talented people out there that if you're looking to set the scene for all of your events, usually invitations say in there, just by the decorating on them and the embellishments, what they can expect. It also tells them about attire, and such as most clients will have like I've said before, these white parties, it's important that they know what that is. People show up and they're like, I don't know what a white party is. And then they feel out of place. So you want to make sure all those little details are mentioned in there. And while a lot of people are going digital, there are definitely great ways to do this with calligraphers and invitation specialists. Another thing that I wanted to mention was favors. If you're not going to invest money in the favors that you're giving out, my big suggestion is just donate money to your most important cause and give that to something that can really afford to give somebody else something bigger than ourselves. I know that I've seen little favors given out and I was like, oh man, I would hate for those people to take those favors and just throw them away or not use them. It's better that they feel that that was gifted over to, whether it was feeding 1,000 people in India with, the understanding that you guys are looking for all the blessings possible and you want to give them this beautiful food that normally they wouldn't get. There's so many organizations out there that you can do that for, that I just encourage you guys, if you're not going to invest in a favor that's going to be absolutely useful for people when they leave, just offer it as a donation. We all appreciate that stuff. And if people want to donate themselves, more the merrier. I think that that's always one of those things that people are like, well, what should I do? And they feel forced. But if you're feeling forced at all, I would make the donation, make that very apparent and noticed. You can put it on the dinner napkins as a little card to let people know foregoing favors, but this is the organization that you guys are donating, whatever it is that you're donating to. Another add-on that you guys could do would be cold sparklers or any type of fireworks. If your event is outside, whether it's a pre-function as you guys move into the party or it's a post-function, I would say think about little things that you guys can add to that just elevate that experience. And that is one of those things that can do that. I know that there is also some rickshaws that I've seen floating around, and not many people go to India and experience that stuff. Like, start getting creative during Mehndis and Sangeets, especially if you're doing them outside. Rickshaw rides and, the bikes out there where people can sit on them and take pictures and be able to have that whole like Bollywood experience. Set up little shots that you can do stuff like that in a photo booth, even if it's just a wall where you don't have anybody man it, but it just gives a little bit of that pop. You properly do the light so that when people are even taking it with your iPhone pictures, they're like, man, these pictures are awesome because you've already thrown that light on them and they don't have to rely solely on the phone lights. Once more, if you have found that this episode offers you guys any type of wealth of information, I'm going to ask that you guys will subscribe, like, share, and follow me everywhere.